and welcome to our Unidentified.
Yes, I am Lindell.
And I'm Sandra.
All right, we're going to talk about the second oldest unidentified body case on record in North Carolina today.
Say that again?
The second oldest unidentified body
Oh, really?
on record in North Carolina. I mean, of course, obviously there's probably older unidentified body cases, but we don't know who,
That's interesting.
All right,
okay.
So this body was found in 1974 in Lucama. You've ever been to Lucama?
I've been through Lucama, yes.
Lucama. I think everybody's been through Lucama. All right, so we got the map there. You see Wilson up in the corner. Lucama's down that way. I went to Lucama for the very first time for this case. So I have now been to Lucama. The skeleton was found on Route 2. Now this is 1974, right?
Right.
So the addresses that were given in routes for rural roads, and the route system doesn't exist anymore, right? So the first hurdle I had to jump in this case is figure out what Route 2 is.
Right.
And the old rural routes were basically just whatever a mailman's route was. That's where that came up at. So I went to the post office there in Lucama, talked to some very nice people, but they didn't know what all Route 2 was either at the time, because Route 2 covered almost all of Lucama, right? So there is no like road for road conversion here.
Right, right.
So I went to the fire department and talked to them, and I think I narrowed this down to Wheat Swamp Road, which is way out in the middle of nowhere.
They're always good to talk to in a case,
Oh yeah, yeah.
I figure they've been there, done that everywhere.
And this old timer, he remembered what Route 2 was, and so and I had name of a property owner, so he remembered probably it was out on that area. So folks, we're talking about Wheat Swamp Road outside Lucama, right? So this article right here was posted. This is only one of two newspaper articles that has ever been written about this case, right?
Wow.
It was written in 1974. It says a skeleton with 2 shotgun holes in the head has been found in a farm a mile east of Lucama in Wilson County, authorities report. It was sent to the North Carolina Memorial Hospital in Chapel Hill to be examined by the state medical examiner.
Huh.
That's it.
God, what?
That is the extent of the information that was ever published about this case.
Well, it's kind of synonymous with, you just said that about another case, and I think 3 cases you said there wasn't a lot of
it's becoming
things written about these unidentified bodies.
Yes, ma'am. It's becoming the prevalent theme in these stories, is that they just wasn't a lot. I think it was a failure of the news, and it was a failure of law enforcement at the time. Not now, of course. You can't hold anybody accountable now for what happened in 1974.
Right.
But this case, in the early 2000s, the Wilson County Sheriff's Office took over the Lucama Police Department, right? So there is no more Lucama Police Department. It's now a substation of the Wilson County Sheriff's Office, right? There it is in Lucama. That used to be the police department. It's now a sheriff's substation. Mm-hmm. Well, apparently when they switched, any files that may have existed about this 1974 case are gone now. Right, so the sheriff's office said they don't have a file on it, and the Lucama Police Department doesn't exist anymore. So we have a case where there's no information, no official information on this case, but yet, and no real news reports to go on either. So, but this isn't a case of someone who died of old age, or someone who got drunk and stumbled in the woods and froze to death.
Right.
You saw the news. The one news report said that there were 2 holes in the back of his head. Right.
Right.
All right. So if you look at the autopsy, you can see that the cause of death right here, shotgun wound. Right. Someone shot this person in the back of the head. Right. And if you look at the manner of death, we're looking at homicide, right? When someone dies, the medical examiners look at them, and they have accident, suicide, natural, unknown, pending. You get pending a lot of times in like overdose cases and stuff. They got to come back and tell you what they died of. And then you got homicide, right? So there's the autopsy report. This man died of shotgun blast to the back of the head. The medical examiner said it was a homicide. The body was nude, right? No clothes. And he was hidden under a pile of straw in an abandoned barn, right?
Wow.
So this is not an unattended death. This is clearly an unsolved murder. And it should be treated as such.
Right.
Right? This is not an unidentified death. It should be treated as an unsolved murder, because that's what it is. All right, so this week in the newspaper, you can find it online for the Spring Hope Enterprise. I got a lot of information about Clyde Gibbs. He's a death investigator for the North Carolina Medical Examiner's Office in Raleigh. He's responsible for maintaining the bone room. The bone room is just it's a room about the size of this studio full of all the unidentified bodies in North Carolina.
Yeah.
And he keeps up with them for DNA testing or whatever else the law enforcement might need. He's a very interesting fellow, but if it wasn't for Mr. Gibbs, this case and a lot of other cases would have long been forgotten. He entered this case into NamUs a few years ago, the National Missing Person Unidentified Bodies case. If he hadn't done that, I wouldn't know about this case. Right, so Mr. Gibbs has done a lot of good work. He's been there since the late 90s.
Right.
A lot of unidentified cases have been solved and at least have been looked at because of Mr. Gibbs. All right, so the shotgun man, he stood about 6 feet tall. They couldn't determine his weight because he was just a skeleton. He had brown hair. They don't know what color eyes he had, right? I mean,
Right.
I have to say that every week. They don't know what eye color they have. So again, this is, we talked about last week how the case in Charlotte, more information than I've ever seen on an unidentified person's case, ever. In that case in Charlotte last week when the girl was found off the interstate.
Yes.
Then this week, no information whatsoever. I mean,
Unbelievable.
I really had to build this story based on the autopsy and that 1-2 sentence news article from 1974.
Well, to put unidentified in perspective, unidentified means, you know what it means to me?
What's it mean to you?
Nobody cared. Nobody cared.
That's pretty good. That's about what it means.
Nobody cared.
Now,
You have not come forth and asked about your loved one at all.
well, yes and no. Yes, I agree with that. But two, also, they might not know who or where to ask.
Yeah, true.
That's what we're trying to do here.
That's what we're trying to do here.
Right, we're trying to build a database of information, a searchable database of information, so that someone one day who misses their, missing persons and whatnot are kind of funny in a way that sometimes people they'll go through the grieving process and they'll kind of accept that their loved one is missing. But then they get to a point in their life where they no longer accept that and they start looking. Right? So that's what we're here to do, is help those people who have decided now they're going to start looking.
Right.
Because, like we covered the case of the man that was shot and dumped into the mine pit. I mean, he had a very distinct tattoo.
Right.
That has never been publicized, ever. He was killed in 1986 and that tattoo has never been shown to the world. I mean, that's our goal here, is to establish a database between this show, YouTube, and the newspaper websites, that one day someone will I wonder what happened to Uncle Joe.
Right.
And they can go on the internet and Google Uncle Joe and snake tattoo.
Right.
And maybe I had a gentleman that contacted me not long ago that had stumbled across a story that I had written a while back just based on his mother's height and weight. So, you know, we have to put the information out there to make it available for people to find. If they don't,
Absolutely.
if they don't have the information, if the small thing that they know about their missing loved one, if it's not there to find, then the case will continue to be unsolved. And in this situation, again, nobody at the Wilson County Sheriff's Office today can be questioned or held accountable, and I certainly don't personally blame them for anything that happened in 1974. Right, I understand there was a lot of corruption down in Wilson County back in the 1970s.
Okay.
I'm not blaming anybody for anything that happened in 1974. But today, let's treat this case like a unsolved murder that it is.
Absolutely.
All right, so next week, we're going to talk about a gentleman that was run over and killed in Fayetteville. Much more recently than 1974. This was, I think it was 2000, and it was in the 2000s. The gentleman was at a gas station in Fayetteville. He stepped out into the street, got run over, and they don't know who he was. So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. There's, again, in these cases, the common thread that we've seen is, sadly, I think in some of these cases, there is nobody who cares. The gentleman we talked about that died in Raleigh, in the woods in Raleigh, I mean, I don't think anybody knows who he is or where he came from. You know, the homeless tend to migrate from place to place. He could be from, you know, that could have been his first night in Raleigh for all we know. I mean, he could have been from anywhere.
Yeah.
But, you know, and then finally, I guess the last statement I'll say about these cases is there's, I've been talking a lot with Leslie Kaufman, who is a forensic genealogist, and they have a project where they're using DNA to try to try to identify some of these unidentified bodies. They've had success in one case in Harnett County this year, and they're working on other ones. But they're, out of these 125 unidentified bodies in North Carolina, more than a third of them, maybe even half of them, there is no DNA available in these cases. So the only way, the absolute only way that someone can be identified in that situation is through publicity. You can't identify a body that has no DNA or no dental records any other way than someone saying, oh wait, that might be my dad. And the only way that happens is through publicity. So that's what we're trying to do here.
Well, coming up, Lyndall, on the K-Files, we're going to be talking about, let's tell them some things that we are talking about. We're going to do a recap in July.
Yeah,
we're having an anniversary show.
Our 1 year anniversary is coming up at the end of the month, so we're going to do a recap.
Yes.
I also have, I know some viewers have said that they want us to do more in-depth cases. I've got 2 or 3 that we're going to take a really deep dive into and provide the folks with everything. I got a lady that went missing in Rocky Mount, and their body was found down at the beach. Her family had a private investigator look into that case, and they have provided me with a mountain of paperwork that I'm going through right now that we will present to the audience. And also I'm going to do a show coming up where some cases that are so old that everybody's dead. So, you know, the suspects are dead. So, I mean, even if it was ever figured out, it's too late to arrest or punish anybody because they're all dead. But I want those stories to, I don't want those stories to vanish because, one, they're really good stories. Two, I think they kind of let people know that if it goes too long, you know what I mean? But, you know, justice delayed is justice denied. If you go too long on a case, the suspects die, and then there's no chance of ever solving that case.
Exactly.
So that's just a little bit of the stuff that we got coming up.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, we've been doing the show a year now. We hope you've enjoyed it. What week in July? Did we ever figure what week in July?
Oh, it was actually in June. It was actually in June. It was the last week of June.
Last week of June.
So that'll be next week.
Okay. Well, we think you'll enjoy. We're going to go back over the some of the cases, Jeff Cobb and bunches of the cases we talked about around here. Refresh your memory, refresh everybody's memory, so maybe we'll get some tips on those. But we're very proud that we feel like we've helped to solve through Team Cold Case and K-Files.
I mean,
3 cases.
And
remember us saying, if we solve one case, we'll be happy.
Right, and we did that. And
we've exceeded that.
The thing about it is that the system works. I mean, that's just I was at a previous location down when I worked down in Wilmington and Jacksonville. I was heavily involved in Crime Stoppers, and they had in Jacksonville they had 19 murders in 5 years, and Crime Stoppers was involved in solving every one of those. So if people know that they're going to get paid like we're doing, then people will talk.
Right.
And that's the whole thing to it, is the enticement for people that may be afraid or may be apathetic.
Yes, it is anonymous. 406-6736 is the number. It's completely anonymous. We do pay out, and we do pay out fast. I mean,
Right.
it's immediate.
Right.
I think the last payout we did was the next morning.
Now, the way Crime Stoppers worked down in Jacksonville was the police solved the crime, and then at the next monthly board meeting, they come back and say, hey, this.
We don't do that.
Right. We wait. When we find out that we've helped, we have a special meeting.
We do.
And go ahead and take a vote on it and get the money out the door, because we want that word of mouth
Absolutely.
that we pay.
I mean, think about it. They have just solved a crime.
Right.
You, the public, you have solved the crime.
And also, I mean, like with this sex offender that's in Florida, that fled here and moved to Florida, he was living with a young child. Maybe he's reformed, although I think the recidivism rate for pedophilia is like 100%. But I mean, maybe he's reformed, maybe he's not going to do it again. But maybe he is, but now he ain't going to get that chance.
But if he gets out, I bet he changes his address next time.
Yeah, I bet he tells. Who knows? But I mean, and there's some other Sergeant Tender, who's homicide detective there in Edgecombe, also handles sex offenders, and he's asked us to do that on occasion. And I think it's
Well, I think we should do the registry here. I mean, I think we should put it out.
Yeah, well,
who they are.
We need to do something, because they passed that law. They're going to take away all the mugshots. So of course, that won't affect the registry. But
well, I think the important reason to do it is because you might have one next door. I mean, you might know. Everybody don't know their neighbors.
That's right.
And if you do know your neighbor, they ain't going to tell you when they move there they're a registered sex offender. Right. I can tell you that right now.
And the reason why they have to submit a photograph is because your neighbor might not tell you his real name, or you might not ever talk to your neighbor to know his name.
That's
but if you see his picture, then you'll know who he is.
Exactly. Well, we got to go for today. Thank you, Linda.
Yep.
Good show again. See you back next week with some more exciting things.
That's right.